Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Show Up to Camron Gran. I am your host, Camron Gran. As a reminder, I'm not a therapist. I'm just somebody going on his own mental health journey, giving you guys little tips and tricks that you guys can try. Take at them if you like them, throw them out if you don't, because at the end of the day, advocating for yourself is the number one beginner jumping off point you can do, because the more that you understand how your brain works and what works best for you, I think the better you are for setting yourself up for success. Now, today I thought it'd be really fun if I dissected the Polar Express, because we're diving into the holiday season of Christmas, and I thought I would dissect like different DBT skills through that movie. For one, number one thing that I learned is I like the Polar Express, but I'm not the biggest fan of Tom Hanks. So imagine my surprise when, as an adult, because I didn't remember watching that movie as a kid, because guess what? My school, we all went to go see the Polar Express when it came out in theaters, and our school was banned from ever coming back because of the Polar Express. Not because of me, because I was a good little, student. I didn't partake in the destroying the theater with popcorn frenzy that seemed to be happening with all the other students, because I'm an angel. Because angels brag about their angelness. The number one thing that I forgot about this movie was just how many roles Tom Hanks plays in it. He plays the train conductor. He plays like the, I'm gonna call it hobo, because that's what he's kind of signifying. He's like a hobo spirit, like just somebody who jumps on train cars and travels. That's what we always called them growing up, or hobos, like the ones that travel on trains. And then he also plays Santa Claus. And then, prove me if I'm wrong, but prove me if I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong. Jeez. I'm pretty sure he also plays the main kid, which all four of those parts blew my mind, because normally I can hear him, but the only part that really sounds like him, except for Santa Claus, because Santa Claus just sounds like if I took this and I like lowered my octave and then was like, "Yes, I'm not Cameron Gran. I'm clearly someone else. I must be ho 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 Santa Claus." They just lowered his pitch, and I was like, "Oh, yep, that's Santa Claus, Tom Hanks." But despite all the Tom Hankness, I really liked this movie. Number one reason is, to me, it definitely signifies the importance of the holiday opposed to the power of like presents. And I feel like more horror movies are highlighting the fact that like Christmas and like other holidays have just become like these like consumerist like days and events, where it's not really about family anymore, and it's about like what do you get. And that's always been an issue for me. It's actually part of the like why this 24th of December is hard for me. We'll talk about that next week, because that's close to the time. But the thing that I really like about this movie is it kind of also plays into faith, or like the belief in a higher power. Sure, in this movie we're thinking of Santa Claus being that source, but it also is kind of like the premise of the movie is kind of like your belief in Santa kind of relays what your journey on the Polar Express is going to be. The main character himself doesn't really know if he believes in Santa, and then through this journey, not only learns that he does believe, but becomes like a lifer for Santa Claus. Even like the famous last line that I'm gonna paraphrase because I don't remember exactly is, "My sister and every one of my friends eventually kind of forgot what the bell sounded like, and they could no longer hear it. But for me, I was always able to hear the bell from Santa's sleigh." Sleigh. The funny thing about that is he wasn't really the most like into Santa Claus throughout the journey, and actually, it surprises me that his friend, who is like has pigtails and she's like in a pink dress the entire movie. It really surprises me that she would even like not be able to hear it anymore, because she was the most like full of belief. And I feel like the problem with that is the entire time the Polar Express comes to your house, drives on a normal asphalt street, and you just, as a kid, are like, "Oh, there's snow on the ground, and that's how the train can travel." When really, it's setting up this premise of, "Oh, are you actually going on this journey on the Polar Express, or did you finally fall asleep on Christmas Eve like you were told to, and this is your brain like hyped up on the anticipation of Santa coming and delivering your presents and just like the amazing Christmas morning you're gonna have tomorrow. And uh I don't know, something about that journey I really like, especially because things that it highlights are also like when you are on your own journey, it's also important to be there for others. And the main kid, even like we all see, I think he's supposed to be the last one, and then at the last second, they get like a final kid to come and join them on the Polar Express. But the kid wasn't sure about going because crazy train arriving on your street doesn't give you like a load of confidence that it's going to end up well. Again, it's a kid logic. I get it. We're enjoying Santa Claus and the magic of that. But again, I also would question if a train decided to jump off the tracks and travel down my street. That's a legit fear. And being like, you're grinding our street to crap. What is going on with you, fine gentlemen? And then he's just like, yeah, you can get on the Polar Express, and we're gonna take you, and we're gonna not let you have hot chocolate because you missed our song, but other than that, you'll have this amazing time. And if you don't want to come, no pressure. But like the train is leaving, so if you leave, you're not getting back on. And the kid just takes a little bit longer than other people to be like, oh yeah, I should go on this journey. And so the main character pulls the emergency brake to let the kid on. And I am highlighting the fact that like if he was just obsessed with his own journey and like trying to figure out what BE stands for on his ticket, he wouldn't have like the wherewithal to like look around and be like, oh, that kid actually wants to come. And even though his friend is the one that like shouts it, he's the one that's like, oh, well, how can we stop it if he wants to join us? And he kind of pulls the lever, and makes the bus stop, the train stop. And the thing that I think the reason why I like that is a lot of times our brain makes us feel very isolated. And then there are times where I've been going throughout my life and then I'll see signs that are similar to mine, like when it comes to my mental health, in other people. And then that will make me pause and stop for a second and be like, hey, I really care for this person. I want them to succeed. Even though we don't know each other closely, it seems like they're really struggling. And I'm going to try the open approach first. And if it doesn't seem like they're ready for that kind of tackling, like doing it upright and like we're getting deep into like the nitty gritty of what's going on with you, if you're not ready for that, that's when I'll start going into like subtle things and like, I don't want to call it manipulation because even though it's going to sound like manipulation when I say it, it's kind of like, oh, well, you're scared of this stuff. How can I slowly introduce those things into your life so then like that fear kind of like dampens and becomes less of a threat? And that's something that I really admired about group is it was kind of like, hey, let's just voice what is your worry first. Once you've voiced it, it gives you a little bit more power over it. And that's kind of how I fell into interfamily therapy, which was kind of like, oh, I have a lot of fear. And because my fear isn't in, like, here's the thing with my brain. It's easier for me to stop a thought in its process if it's a thought that I'm hearing. But when it comes to, like, the empty void of emotion, because usually when I have emotion, I'm having thoughts. But when my thoughts aren't what's, like, directly involved in the emotion going on, that's when I'm kind of like, oh, I don't know what to do anymore because I don't really live in my emotions that much. This is a revelation to me. I didn't realize this, but I don't allow myself another problem because you can't control like what happens. Like the reason why they want you to find neutral on your journey is because that's how you'll know when you're having a high or a low. And neutral is kind of like, oh, this is like the zone. When I'm in this zone, I know that I'm cool, I'm chill, like there's nothing can hurt me. But it's okay if something comes in and threatens that zone as long as I deal with it and allow it to like have whatever moment it needs to have, and then I push it away from my zone. And then it's like, no, you can't push me away. And like, I'm not pushing you away. I let you have space, but that space had a limited amount of time. And now that the time's up, we agreed that you're out of here. Gosh, that was really very dramatic for Polar Express, but it's kind of very similar because the kid needs to be isolated on his own, and then the two other like the kid that they picked up just goes to the very end car and is by himself for the beginning part of the movie, and then both the main girl character and the boy decide to, I don't know their names. I'm just gonna be honest. I don't remember their names. Sorry. They both decide to go and like bring him hot chocolate that they like hid from the conductors who give you less than 60 seconds to down a piece of hot chocolate. Like, I don't know. Like, that's crazy. A good thing it's an animated film, because if somebody was like, here's a hot boiling pot of cocoa, now down that in 60 seconds or less, no matter what it does to your throat, you don't have any longer than that. After that, we take it back and we ride away on our flying carts. And I was like, okay, well, we're not, I would have a problem with that. I wouldn't even have started, because I don't like hot cocoa. I like my cocoa just like barely above room temperature. It's like, oh, why didn't you just make this out of like room temperature water? I'll tell you why. Bacteria. But I digress. The thing with the kid is, they go to him, they bring him hot chocolate, and then they're just trying to like open his mind up a little bit more about the idea of Santa. And like, because I feel like part of his journey, like the kid that got on board, is like whether or not Santa is real. Is that his journey, or is his journey more whether or not he's worthy of receiving from something from Santa? Like, and I don't even think it has to do with like, is he a naughty or nice kid? I think it's more of like your image of your self worth. He wants to believe in Santa because he's like, it's magical, it's fantastical. Like Santa Claus, oh, so amazing. But the idea that Santa would think him worthy enough to bring him something, he doesn't believe. And I only wonder how that translates into what's going on in his personal life. But instead of like challenging him on those thoughts, like the girl decides to like sing my favorite song of the entire movie, which is like All I Want When Christmas Comes to Town. Ooh, if you don't know it, look it up. Polar Express. It's them singing at the end of the train with like the aurora borealis over their heads, as they're driving deeper into like the the North Arctic towards the North Pole. And what I like about that song is it's kind of like, oh well, we're not really, we want Santa to come, but we're not. That's not what we're here for. We prepare for Santa to like allow him to be into our houses, because it's not just about the reward. It's like, I really want to. Is it recognition? Because I don't know if that's a good reason for doing it. Like, to me, the reason why like you want to be on the nice list is because you're just trying to spread joy and cheer, and that's kind of like the crux of it. And sometimes when you're always focused on spreading joy and cheer, you shut yourself down. And I think the beauty of like that song is it's kind of like, this is what we want to happen, but also recognizing that like even when we're on our darkest day, like just because you have a dark day doesn't mean you're on the naughty list. Like, you have to accept all of yourself, and then like it's a balancing scale. Like, you teeter totter on that list like you're supposed because we all have the propensity for to quote a movie that's coming out already out, it's wickedness. We all can be like really good, or we can be really bad, and it's kind of like when you're at neutral, it's when you have to have enough of the wherewithal to like challenge those thoughts and be like, okay, no, this isn't right. I shouldn't do this thing. Translating that towards the end of the film, this kid who was questioning Santa Claus, whether or not he was worthy of this present, at the end of the film, they stumble upon like Santa's sleigh and like fall into his like sack of goods. And the kid finds a present for himself, and he's so excited because he didn't believe that he was worthy of this. And then he kind of like grips on it like it's a safety blanket, like, oh, I've earned this. I don't want to say I'm special, but I think worthiness is definitely there, which is why when they're discovered by the elves, and he's like, hey, listen, I understand you found your present, but like the whole point of tonight is that Santa comes to you and gives you your present, and if you take it, you're kind of stealing an experience from yourself. And so like the kid kind of is like, okay, well, if I'm worthy of this present, then that means that I should give it back, because then Santa can come, and that's what all I really wanted. And that's something that I really like about the film, is it's kind of like all these little moments add up. And for instance, they call him the nerdy kid like multiple times throughout the kids. He has like a, hey, what are you doing over there? He like has like a high pitched nasal, wears glasses, does not sound like a mute at all. And they call him a nosy kid or a know it all. And the entire film, instead of trying to help, which is something that I realized with this film is like there's a difference between laying out a fact to be helpful and then laying out a fact so you don't have to help. Like if something's currently happening and you're laying out a fact that has nothing to do with this current situation, but it's a stressful time, that kind of feels like packing it on. Like you're making something more stressful for somebody because you're trying to, I guess, add information, but the information is kind of diluting what the problem is, and this kid kind of is more about like the facts and then like kind of greedy for facts and being like he needs attention. And then when they, because they accidentally fall into Santa's sleigh and then they go on this journey, this kid actually like decided to not only ditch the Polar Express, to then like hop on board Santa's sleigh and then dive into that big red sack and be like, okay, where's my present? I want it. I don't care if it messes up what Santa's plan is. I want it. And then when he gets discovered, he's like, "Hey, I'm just doing what you guys are doing. Like you guys wanted to see your presents early, so am I. That's why we're here. So I'm not any worse than you are." And I think that's a good way to highlight like when you're in DBT, a lot of your friends and your family are going to get tired of you talking about DBT, and that's fine. But sometimes they'll like be like, "Why are you taking so long to say something?" And it's like, "Hey, I'm taking this long because you told me you don't want to hear about the DBT stuff anymore, but I still have to do it. I still have to use this way to process, which takes me some time, but that is a way of protecting myself." And so if it's an issue for you, then that's, I mean, it's your issue, but like the thing I'm removing you from is the process. If seeing my process disturbs you and I've done one thing to like kind of remove you from it, you can't be mad at like now there's silence. Whereas like this kid intentionally went out of his way to go like look at his present, steal his present, whatever. Where these other kids were actually just trying to help somebody, and they fell upon it, and then they were like, "Oh, look at us! We found our presents. It's so cool." And then when it's pointed out to them that it's not for them to keep, it's for them to like, I guess, get back to like the center of the North Pole where Santa shows up. And the reason why it's important is because I think a lot of times in life we feel like we have to be on and at our 100% no matter what's getting thrown at us. And so if anything throws off our patterns, it makes us freak out and we want to like hide and like run. And what I like about the Polar Express, especially in these moments, is like things go wrong. They do things by accident. They try to do things like for the better. Like they think they're doing something for a good reason, and then when they later on they find out, oh, you thought that was a good reason, but really that was something really bad. And what I like about the girl is something that happens throughout the film is the main character keeps saying, "Are you sure?" Like making her question yourself and like reanalyze everything. And as somebody with anticipation anxiety, I also hate when somebody says, "Are you sure about that?" Like, I wouldn't have suggested it if I wasn't like at least 95 to 100% like leaning towards like a positive side of like this should work, but like there's always a percentile that it could fail. And like you should give people the freedom to fail because we learn from failure as much as success. But when you ask somebody in like like a really stressful environment or like when the stakes are high, whether or not they're sure about something, it makes them second guess themselves, and then their entire foundation for what their help was could be thrown off because they're like, well, I don't want to like put something into like the pile of how to fix something, and then for it to go wrong, which halfway through the movie, like the Polar Express is like spinning off the tracks, and like the girl knows some things, like she was left in like the front of the like to the conductor's like cabin to like brake when they told her to, and then the people who are in charge of conducting told her which brake to pull, and then the main character's like, "Are you sure that this is the lever?" Now that as she's being questioned, she's only like 8, 9. Like she's not gonna know like 1,000% whether or not that's the correct lever. She believes, based on that short experience, that that's the lever the guy told her to pull. But it's kind of like you're also never new to this conductor phrase, and she actually has like the experience of talking to the conductor, whereas you're just like, well, I see two break things, and I don't want to be wrong. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like sometimes it's okay to be wrong. not to bring up another movie, but like, not that I love this movie, but like one of the songs in Moana 2 is like, it's okay to get lost. Whereas like a lot of times when we falter off the path or we don't follow where the map shows us, we start to panic and we feel like, oh, we're failing because we're not following what the map or like the layout says that we should do. When really a lot of explorers in Moana's case, or even a lot of like people who are questioning Santa Claus or other beliefs, like sometimes those failures are what either strengthen our beliefs, dampen our beliefs, or make us, I think, more certain in whatever we feel. But like, for instance, I go on and on about how you need to develop what your core values are. And the reason why you need to do that is because once you know what your core values are, that's when people start to question them, or they'll start making you question those core values. And I don't think questioning them is the issue. It's more of like, oh, so now that I know this is what I value, and people point this out as like, oh, we should do this, it doesn't matter, or like, oh, it's no big deal. It's a big deal to you because you know that like this is a thing that if it goes wrong is a huge deal for me. And for this girl, it's a huge deal for her when people ask her, "Are you sure?" Like, she's not like super like I'm a super factual person. I'm always correct because I do all this. I don't know what the nerdy kid is I'm talking about. I don't know his deal because he's kind of like always in the background, being a menace and unhelpful. As somebody does in a Santa Claus movie, you always have to have somebody being an exemplar example. I've been watching. I'm not going to say that on the radio. I've been watching Moira Rose and David. I've been watching like the Levy's show. I'm not saying it because I'm on the radio, but if you know what I'm talking about, I feel like I just spoke like Moira Rose, and I didn't mean to. But the thing with like not. The thing with questioning people is, especially when they have like more of a direct source to what could be the problem, is the issue. Like for me, if I've tried something and I go to a mechanic in a car in a bus because I drive buses, and then they're like, "Well, it works," and I'm like, "Okay, I understand that you're saying that it works, and you're telling me that what I'm seeing isn't a problem. So if it's not a problem and it's working correctly, can you come with me to show me what I'm doing? Because if this is correct, I must be doing something wrong. Because every time I drive it, something's wrong with it. So like, show me what buttons to push or how to set this up correctly, so I am going out there and I'm like having a good ear for success." My English is strange today. You'll have to forgive me, but like that is kind of what pushes them in the Polar Express when she finally is like, no, it's that lever. That's kind of how they avoid crashing into a bunch of deer. But they also spin off the tracks and they're now like in a U shape over a frozen lake. So that's not really good for a magical train. But with enough faith and magic, because I don't know what powers a Polar Express because it's clearly not the track. Well, I guess they're in the steam engine and we see like the coal that's going into the engine, but it's just really interesting because a lot of things come up, and at any point it could be like, oh, this is extremely unsafe. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this with like children on board, but also a part of like, I think part of like Santa Claus is your journey into your belief of whether or not he exists or not. And a lot of people are like, I just believe, but I think there's more power in like having that belief challenged, and then resolving after you've gone through who's been challenging it, why you still believe in this person or why you believe in whatever you believe. It's just kind of like when I do have those challenges, it allows my brain to process it, to then go through my own core beliefs. So then I know, oh, okay, well, I don't know why. I think her name's Sarah, the main character's sister. I don't know why Sarah at the end of the movie eventually stops listening to the bell, because maybe I saw it from my own eyes, but even people who saw Santa Claus give me this bell from his sleigh could no longer hear it. But like, I still maintain my belief in him. And this bell is not only a reminder of Santa, but it's also an embodiment of what belief gives me. And I think that can also be said about like intention when it comes to DBT. Like a lot of times when you start this journey, if you're just going in and just doing anything at all imaginable, that's when it kind of can leave us being like, I think, questioning whether or not we're actually going to have successes. Because when you don't know what your baseline is, it's hard to be like, I'm back to normal, especially when your baseline could be a normal that you've never experienced before. Because as in my case, my normal is making myself miserable. I'm 29 and I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with it. I don't want that to be the reality, but like I've done it for so long that I had to be like, oh, okay, these thoughts aren't real thoughts. These are thoughts that are conditioned to appear if I go too long with not being in neutral or too long being happy. And also sometimes being in neutral for too long because sometimes, like dark thoughts are just like, hey, I am here. I am important. You may not want to think about me, but I know your secrets. And if you don't let me out, I don't know what we're about to do. If that makes sense. It's kind of like if you push them away, that's when I've had more like body things happening weirdly. Like once somebody yelled at me and I didn't understand why I burst into tears because what they were yelling at me about was actually more of like positive reinforcement. But like I was bursting into tears and that's when I was like, hey, your body is definitely reeling from something that you thought you were over with because bursting into tears with over a happy exclamation is an odd choice. It's like, oh, okay, well, that doesn't like add up. It doesn't compute with me brain. So what's going on with you? What like because as I've said, if I have like a legit thought happening, like, oh, Cameron, what are you doing? Aren't you worried about looking dumb? Like that's a thought. Like that's a thought that's like audible in my head. But also, we have our emotions. And sometimes I'm aware that I'm having an emotion and I'm going through something, but like sometimes I'll do something and be like, why did I just do that? And it's because, oh, well, my body was like way further ahead than my brain is. Like, you ever been in a room full of people and they're kind of all looking for you to like be something, and then your body just feels like drained and gross because it's more like your body is aware that you're kind of putting up a front to like make people believe something, whereas you actually are miserable, and because of that your like miserableness is coming out in like the way that your body feels rather than like the happy-go-lucky cheery expression that you're putting on. So everybody else thinks that you're dealing great over something where really you're just panicked and you just don't know how to process it. And I think that that's kind of the point of the end of the film when the kids go back to their houses and they punch their tickets and you see what their journey was about. For instance, the main girl character, her path was to lead, and I think that those moments of when she's being challenged showcase the fact that like, oh well, I had this plan, I thought we were going to like execute it, and when we executed it, I believe that these things would end up in a good way. And part of a leader is not only to have a good plan, but to trust that plan when people question it and be like, hey, once we finish my plan, then we can reanalyze what went wrong, what went well. But like, I have to be able to see it in action before I can actually say, oh, that's not the correct lever. Like, if that's what I believed I was told to pull, we're going to pull that baby. And then after something other happens, that's when I'll be like, I was right. I'd rather make the mistake believing I was right than, does that make sense? Like, I pulled the wrong lever believing it was correct and it ended up being the other one. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You probably don't because I don't even know what I just said. But the whole point of it is it's like trusting in yourself. And that is what the DBT journey is about. It's like, oh, when you trust in yourself, you have a strong enough foundation to really guide you through things. And with belief, which is what the main character gets at the end of the movie on his ticket, that's when you really have the confidence to challenge others when they challenge you, or stick up for yourself and be like, no, that this is true, and you guys may not hear it anymore, but I know Santa's real because I hear the spell. I have a strong faith because I feel it, and I can't say no because regardless of how your emotions have changed or your internal like clock or your like whatever your belief system is, whatever has changed for you hasn't changed for me, and that's why I'm still here holding strong in this belief. And I think that's about a wrap up on this special leading up to Christmas episode of Show Up with Cameron Gran. I really hoped you guys appreciated it. I liked reflecting on the Polar Express. It's a very interesting movie. Let's just put it that way. I enjoyed a lot. I've already talked about my surprise. Like, oh, Tom Hanks is good in this. That surprises me not because I think he's a terrible actor. He's just somebody who his choices in acting I don't agree with most of the time, which is why he bothers me. But I never in my life have I been like, oh, he's a terrible actor. I think he can act. He just doesn't make choices that I like. I don't agree with a lot of his choices, is what I'm saying, which is why it's hard for me to watch him. I had to do that rant for myself, so I'm glad that I shared that with you. But again, thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. Give it a comment. However you want to like show me that you're there. I appreciate it. And with that, don't forget it as you go throughout the week to take a moment to just process where you are and be like actually show up for yourself because you matter.